Welcome back to another edition of the Game of the Week here at Tailgate Discussions and at Phantom Sports Industries. My name is Dakota, that is Alex, and today, the Game of the Week is South Carolina versus Ole Miss. I believe Ole Miss is at South Carolina. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Alex.
Yeah, that's correct.
Alex, your opening thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think this has the potential to be a really exciting game. Obviously, we'll shake up the SEC a bunch. Everybody likes to talk about Ole Miss as the SEC dark horse in that conference, but South Carolina kind of has a chance to be the same. I really, really love their combo of Lenore Sellers and Raheem Sanders. That gives South Carolina a really, really formidable rushing attack, and I think that's going to give Ole Miss a lot of issues and make it a much closer game than what the spread indicates, which is Ole Miss minus 9.5.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit there the shocking loss to Kentucky last week for Ole Miss, and I've just got one question before we move on here. Are we overhyping Ole Miss, or is that Kentucky team just very undervalued?
I definitely think it's a little bit of both. One thing I know for sure is that Mike Stoops from Kentucky and that Kentucky football team, they always start the seasons very, very, very well. They start the football seasons very, very hot, but Kentucky's been known to always taper off towards the middle and end of the year. They do have 2 losses already. They took 2 losses, but they barely missed out on a victory against Georgia. They played them extremely well. So I'm no stranger as a Florida fan to seeing Kentucky upset an SEC team early in the season and then kind of fall off as the year goes on. So you're going to get those types of performances from them. But for Ole Miss, this was kind of an eye-opener. They were the number 1 offense in the country coming into that game, and they just didn't really have an answer in the second half. And it took a miraculous Hail Mary throw to get them within field goal range to at least tie the game, and they weren't able to do it.
Yeah, and you mentioned it already. The money line is in favor of Ole Miss with a 9.5 point spread. The money line at minus 110, minus 340 right now. It opened up at minus 325 for Ole Miss and plus 260 for South Carolina. It is currently at plus 270 for South Carolina on Wednesday, October 2nd. Ole Miss is coming into this one with a 4-1 record, 3-2 record versus the spread. South Carolina has a 1-3 record versus the spread. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens here. I do think that Ole Miss has the better chance to come away with the victory in this one, and here's why. The favorite has won each of South Carolina's last 10 games at Williams-Brice Stadium. South Carolina has lost each of its last 4 games in October. Ole Miss has covered the spread in 4 of its last 5 games as a favorite. And South Carolina has failed to cover the spread in 3 of its last 4 games, home games, in October. Couple of total points facts for this one. Each of Ole Miss's last 4 games as a favorite have gone under the total points line. And 4 of South Carolina's last 5 games as an underdog have gone under the total points line. So, with that being said, I think this one is pretty much wrapped up. At least for me anyways. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I was a little conflicted with this game because I personally really, really like South Carolina's roster.
Mm.
Like I've kind of watched them more than I expected to this year. And prior to last weekend, I probably would have pegged this as a really bad matchup for South Carolina. Um, but after what Kentucky was able to do to them on last Saturday, I think it'll be pretty similar to how South Carolina is going to try to stop them.
Mm.
And just like Ole Miss, South Carolina has a really formidable defensive front, like one of the best in the country. Um, they have two DBs on their team. One is 6'2", one is 6'3", at cornerback. They both have two interceptions on the year. They're long. They can defend. They can play man. They can really, really give the top receivers on Ole Miss some trouble. And like I mentioned before, South Carolina does it on the ground. They have two really, really dynamic rushing quarterbacks in Lenore Sellers and Robbie Ashford. And then their running back, who is a transfer from Arkansas. He's one of the best running backs in the country, Raheem Sanders. If this team was completely healthy coming into this game, I'd be confident in saying the Gamecocks are going to upset them. But there's some questionable. Lenore Sellers is questionable to play in the game, the quarterback, and it looks like he might be playing. But Raheem Sanders, the starting running back, his chances of playing are really in doubt. So we should know later this week. But if they don't have one of those weapons, who they really, really, really need them because they can't throw the ball that well, although they have amazing receivers, they can't throw it. Ole Miss is probably going to win this game. But I will say this: I think South Carolina covers plus 9.5. Williams-Brice Stadium is a really, really hard place to play. I know that the favorite has won each of those the last 10 games, but that's a real home field advantage. They almost were able to take down LSU the last time they played at home. So I think that they have a puncher's chance.
All right. Well, I think it has come down to the time for our predictions. We didn't bring anybody on for our predictions this week. I wish I would have thought about that ahead of time, because we do have a South Carolina Gamecock on the Phantom Sports staff. But for this one, I'm going to go with Ole Miss. By 10. I'll go 34-24.
I think this game is actually going to go under the total of 53.5, even though we're talking about one of the top offenses in the country. And South Carolina, they're not too bad either. They average 30 points a game. I just think the defensive fronts on both of these teams are going to give each offense a lot of trouble. I also don't think Ole Miss covers the spread, so I'm going to go with a 28-21 victory for Ole Miss.
All right, well, there you have it for this week's game of the week. Ole Miss versus South Carolina. Alex, do you know where we can watch this game at?
Honestly, let me look that up right now. I don't
Actually,
know for sure.
It does look like it is going to be on ESPN.
Okay.
At 12:30 p.m. my time, which would be 3:30 your time.
3:30 kickoff.
3:30 Eastern time kickoff
Mm-hmm.
at Williams-Brice Stadium in Columbia, North Carolina, or South Carolina. Excuse me. South Carolina. I know Hurricane Helene has been going on down there in the Carolinas, Georgia, and everywhere else in the South. Hopefully that doesn't have an effect on this one. I know a lot of people might be there just to kind of get away,
Yeah.
get their minds off of everything tragic that has gone on. By the way, we send all our prayers to everyone that is struggling with that. Um,
Yeah.
but
As someone who's gone through my fair share of hurricanes, like just looking at the what they went through is just devastating. I mean,
mhm.
they're so far up north, so to see something like a storm like that go from the Gulf all the way up to like halfway north of the country and just wipe out an entire area of the Carolinas is insane. Um, so I wish them the best, and yeah, it sucks when a hurricane is anywhere near you. You can't really take these things lightly. Even when it doesn't even look like it's in your path, you have to be ready at a moment's notice to like do something about it.
Mhm. Well, that's going to do it for us on this week's episode of the Game of the Week. Thanks for watching. Make sure to watch the game over on ESPN. We'll see you next week.